Okay, welcome to today's episode, the Tai Lopez podcast radio program. I have a very fascinating guest who's on how many city road tour?
100 cities.
100 cities. Okay. We're
Only
talking about
100.
only 100. We're talking about the $100 startup. I have with me Chris Guillebeau, and he's the author of quite a few interesting books. One of the ones you might have seen me post on my Snapchat recently was Side Hustle. So what I want to talk about, we're doing a 18-minute TED Talk style, get right to the point. Let's go through 3 ways.
Okay.
We only have time for 3.
Great.
For the average person to go from the job they don't like, okay, full-time, the average person has a 9 to 5 they don't particularly care for, to either a side hustle, which is like a part-time income, or a $100 startup. What if you had to distill it down? I always say, last day on planet Earth, you have to leave a manual for your children, and you only have time to write 3 things. So they're not. You don't want to be too general. What are the three most important principles to creating either a side hustle or a $100 startup? Number 1.
Yes, awesome. I like it. Number 1, I would say, look at the skills you already have as opposed to trying to go out and get a bunch of new skills. Because when it comes to starting an income generating project, whether you want it to be your side hustle, like you said, or whether you want it to be your full-time income, your beyond full-time income, your thing that makes you a lot of money, I think a lot of people have the wrong idea, and they're like, oh, I should look and see what's happening out in the world. People are making apps. I should make an app. And I'm like, okay, do you know how to code? They're like, nope. Like, are you a web developer? They're like, nope. So look at the skills you already have. And it's very likely that those are the skills, the life experience, if you went to college, whatever schooling you had, that's what we can use, to essentially develop your side hustle or your income generating project. And you need to learn some businessy skills, but those are really simple. Like the businessy skills are what I talk about in the books. You learn those, you apply them to what you already know, and that's where you're going to see your success.
So basically, Peter Drucker in his book, Managing Oneself, which I consider one of the great books, he says, build on strength. So would you agree? That is very similar to what you're saying, because obviously if you've never done something, it's not going to be a strength. So the fact, so you're saying build on something you basically you already have something up your sleeve that you probably don't realize you have. Do you find that most people listening actually have something up their sleeve that's marketable skill that can be turned into a side hustle, part-time business, or a full-time startup?
I think everyone's an expert at something, and I think sometimes they don't know what it is. So sometimes they kind of look and they're like, well, I did this, this is what I do for my job. I know how to do my job, but I don't necessarily know how to apply it. So I think they have to pull it out sometimes or tease it out, but I do think everyone has it. I'll give you an example. And I wrote about this in the new book. There's a guy named Tanner who goes on a cruise with his wife. Never been on a cruise before, wasn't sure what to expect. And he came back and he was like, it was actually a pretty good experience. Would have been better if I'd had some information before I left. Like he was wondering, can I watch Netflix on a cruise? How does internet access work? All that kind of stuff. So he was a copywriter for his day job. So he's using the skill he already had. He created a really simple WordPress blog. Like anybody can make, designs pretty bad by his own admission. And on that blog, he's basically answering questions about cruises. Like, can I watch Netflix on a cruise? Writes a whole post about it. Can I watch HBO? Blah, blah, blah. He connects that really simple blog with the bad design to Google's AdSense program, where people come and they read the post, they click a link, he gets paid a little commission. We go about 6 months into the story, 6 months of him posting, like an article or 2 a day, and he's making $3,000 a month from this little blog.
And just part-time, probably.
Part-time, yeah. He's just doing, he's got his job still, right? So now it's 9 months, and he's making like $4,000 a month. It's been about a year now. I need to go back and talk to him because it's been 3 months. But 3 months ago, he's doing $4,000 a month. So that's real money, right? This is not like a few $100 a month. Like this is very significant income for lots of folks. And he's using a skill that he already has. So yes, I do think everyone has a skill like that. It may not be copywriting. It may be something totally different. Yeah. But that's what I try to pull out from people.
Yeah. So that's part of, for those of you listening, I recommend you check out his books. I'm not being paid to say that, but I like books like you've written that are pretty straight to the point, have practical action plans. This is one of those. I have a buddy who is one of the great marketers of all time, in my opinion, internet guys, and he makes probably about $5 million a month. And he always tells me, whenever you're trying to do something, don't forget to sit in a chair with a notepad and just brainstorm. A lot of people go, what am I good at? Well, just start brainstorming. He said, inevitably, you write down 20 things, you cross off 18 of them, you have 2 solid starts.
I like it.
Okay, before we go to number 2, we're already live here. For those of you watching, I'm here with Chris Guillebeau. Did I get it right?
No, but that's okay.
Guillebeau.
That's great.
We're talking about the $100 startup. How can you start with nothing or $100 or less? Or how can you create what's called a side hustle? He's a best-selling author of multiple books. And for those of you listening, one of the most common questions is, how the heck do I start? Well, one of the ways you start is he's giving 3 tips. We've already done 1. You've missed some of it. Number 1 is don't build off a skill you don't yet have. Don't start your first business on something you're not yet good at. It takes a while to acquire skills. So Chris said, just because you see somebody building an app and your buddy made $1 million on an app doesn't mean you have to build an app. You can do something else. So what's number 2?
All right. So you mentioned in the little intro, don't be general, be specific. I think that's great because the tip is going to be, don't just have an idea. Probably everybody out there has a business idea. You talk to everybody in the world, they're like, I got this idea. So what I want to help people do is go from idea to income, which is the subtitle of the book, but to be specific, idea to offer. So if you think about it as consumers, we don't buy ideas. Like we don't go in the store and buy ideas. Like we go and we buy products, we buy services. So I want to help people like when they start to think like, oh, what am I good at? What is that skill that I'm going to build off of? Then they get an idea. They understand like the power of observation, which is something I teach them about in the book. Then I want them to say, okay, here's my idea, but very specifically, here is an offer, right? And so an offer includes a promise. It's like, how's it going to change your life? How's this going to like make your life so much better, relieve stress, make you more money, whatever it is. What's the pitch? How are you going to tell a story about it? What's the price? How are people going to give you money? Like, how are they going to make that exchange of value? So I'm trying to help people go really quickly from not just a general idea, but here's something that I'm actually making. Here's how I deliver it to people, and here's how I get paid for it.
Yeah. Too many people are. The way I think the best analogy of business idea versus execution, the idea is the seed, and everybody knows this Twitter needs to be. You can't even see me on the Twitter. Everybody knows that a seed in and of itself, unless it's watered, planted, and cultivated and fertilized, does nothing. But the problem is people are enamored. Then they go, I can't start because I don't have a seed. For the average person trying to make less than $10,000 a month, I totally agree with Chris. You already have a good enough seed to make $1,000 to $10,000 a month. It's rare that you meet somebody. And the reason why, because everybody has a problem. And one of the old sayings that's so true is that to make $1 million, help 1 million people solve a problem. If you want to make $1 billion, you solve 1 billion people's problems. Facebook created billionaires. 1 billion people use Facebook. Google created billionaires. 1 billion people or more use Google. So to make $10,000, you only have to imagine a world where 10,000 people have the same problems as you, which there's more than that.
Probably so. Or you can make $10 on each person and only help 1,000 people.
There you go. Yeah. So what's number 3? The third thing someone needs to know to either start a side hustle or make or to do a $100 startup.
Great. So we started with that idea of building on the skills you already have, maybe taking an inventory of yourself, your life experience, your education, all that kind of stuff, maybe questions your friends ask you. Then we talked about going from idea to offer. And I'm going to say number 3 is, because I've got this 27-day plan, like 27 days from idea to income, and I'm trying to encourage busy people to follow. Probably a lot of people listening or watching are busy. So I'm going to say that the third thing is to launch before you're ready. And I have a lot of stories about that. I'm sure you do too, of people who are like, man, I wasn't sure that I was ready to go with this thing. And actually, it really wasn't ready. Like there were some features that were missing. Like there was some problem with it or whatever. But I decided finally, like if I don't just put this out in the world, it's never going to happen. I'm going to find another reason to delay. And when they actually put it out in the world, maybe it's a huge success, maybe it's just a small success, but whatever it is right away, they get more confidence. And then they actually can then go back and like fix the features or, improve it however, but it's out in the world. And I've heard from so many people that are just like, man, if I had never done it, like I can't imagine what my life would be like now. So I'm so glad I put it out into the world. So I'm trying to get people to do it before they feel ready, because they're probably never going to feel ready. They're never going to feel it's perfect. So let's just push that a little bit. And then also, because a lot of what I teach people about is, in the startup world, you hear all this talk about validation, about how you have to validate your idea.
Right.
I actually think a lot of ideas can't be validated until you actually do them.
Right.
Like the guy with the cruise thing when we began this conversation by talking about a guy who makes $4,000 a month, writing about cruise questions. I mean, maybe there was some way he could have like gone through some market research or something to go through a validation exercise before he started it, but probably not. Like he just did it and saw what happened, right? So don't worry about the validation thing. Your validation is how the market responds.
Yeah, I just had yesterday. I did a little mastermind war room at my house for those of you who watched, and I flew in the top crypto guys in the world, Bitcoin people and VCs, and I had some of the top private equity guys, and there was a guy there named Guillebeau. He's a pretty well-known guy, and he's the largest AngelList. You familiar with AngelList, which is basically angel investors, kind of like VCs, but they invest in startups. He had 40 syndicates at once. It's the most in history. Wow. So this guy's one of the top investors in Silicon Valley. And if you look at his overall strategy, you can't just be a perfectionist. If he was a perfectionist, he wouldn't have so he was in 40 syndicates. A syndicate, let's say, on average, could have 40 investments inside of a syndicate. So he could have 160 things going at once. The reason he does that is, going back to the analogy of your idea being a seed, when you plant a garden and you plant corn in your garden, one of the things you learn is that you plant more seeds, you plant them closer together than can actually grow. What you do, let's say in 1 inch, you're supposed to plant one corn seed, or you're supposed to grow one stalk of corn. You would plant 3 seeds, and then you come back like a month later, and you thin out the weak ones.
Interesting.
And so for you as an entrepreneur, what Chris is trying to say is that you're like trying to find the perfect seed, but he's saying until you put it in the ground, water it a little bit, you don't know which one's the good. All seeds look the same.
Right. So I feel like a lot of people are focused on before the seeds in the ground.
Yeah.
Like what seed has the most potential, what seed's going to take off, and you really don't know. So later, absolutely, I totally agree about the pruning thing. Let's go through and get through things that aren't working, maximize the ones, give them the space they need to grow, et cetera. But first up, get them in the ground.
Yeah. Of the people who contacted you, because you've got best-selling books, what's one of the standout stories? You told the one about the cruise. What's another? People need to be encouraged. They need to hear that this stuff actually works. What's another great testimonial from people using your 27-day steps? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I told you an online story, which is great. Got lots of online ones, but I also got like people doing offline stuff. So here's a kind of combination of the two, like offline, online. A dude from South Carolina goes into this upscale men's shop in Austin, Texas, and he sees a candle for sale for $80.
Yeah.
And he's like, whoa, $80 for a candle, like that's crazy. Who does that? And then of course the second thing he thinks is, how can I sell those? Because $80 a candle, right?
Right.
So he's like, I'm gonna go home and like learn how to make candles. And so he doesn't go back to candle school. He doesn't get like a candle degree. He like goes to YouTube, right? And first of all, he's watching like the Tai Lopez videos, but then he like types in how to make candles. Right. And he's like, let me learn how to make candles on YouTube, just like our ancestors did, 100 years ago. So over a couple months, he like starts up this little brand, and he's selling these candles. The reason why I like this story, well, for lots of reasons, but one is he's selling using Amazon's Fulfilled by Amazon program. Right. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. So you guys don't have to store candles in your house. You can send them directly to the warehouse.
Right.
In Amazon.
And not only that, that's a great benefit, but not only that, you have access to Amazon's 200 million customers.
Yeah.
Right. So you can actually focus on the product. And, he's just like one dude out there. He doesn't have like a huge social presence, but he's built this product. He's found something that connects with people. So Amazon is basically like, giving him access to their customers. So I forgot exactly what he's doing in terms of numbers. These days I don't want to overstate it, but when he started, it very quickly went to something like a couple $1,000s a month, working part-time. And that was a while back. So I'm sure there's an update since then. But I love stories of people just exploring, curiosity and asking like, why not? Like if somebody else is selling an $80 candle, why can't I figure out how to make a candle? It can't cost $80 to make it. So, what can I do that's interesting like that? So, in the book and in all the other stuff I do, I've got, story after story of people that are doing this. And I'm trying to not just tell the stories and say those are great, but to dissect them a little bit, and say, okay, well, how did that person get their idea? How did they go through the process? Like what steps did they take along the way? What mistakes did they make? What challenges did they encounter? like what were their successes, but also their failures, and then how can, you, the listener, the reader, the viewer, how can you do this in your own way? So my hope is, that people will read the book and not just say like, oh, cool book. I hope that they'll read it. And I know you appreciate this too, that they'll read it and be like, okay, now I'm going to apply this in some way in my life. That's what makes me happy.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think we live in a world where you have millions of people who had seeds that would have turned into something, but they freaked out. They had a heart attack. They couldn't quit their job. One of the things that I like, for those of you watching who have big responsibilities, so maybe you have kids and you have this, he has 2 books, okay? One of them is the $100 Startup, which is much more like how to start your thing, maybe quit your job. But for those of you who that's not a possibility right now, look at Side Hustle, because I love that, I love that kind of phrase. That's a good – did you come up with that? I mean, obviously it's a phrase, people, but the first book with that as a title.
It is the first book with that title. So I've been writing about it for 8 years, but I didn't originate it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, side hustle is somewhat of a colloquial term, but to make that into a step-by-step, and in your books are, one thing, how did you decide how long to write in terms of length? Did you come in consciously to writing your books and go, I'm going to make it 250 pages,
X words or something? I don't think so. No, I think I try to figure out what do I want to say,
right?
And how, what is then required to say that. So it's not so much about filling the space. Like I actually you said something very kind earlier about how the books are practical. Like that for me is the goal. I actually want people to not go more than a page or 2 without being like, I can do, that's an interesting thing. I can apply that in my life. So I try to just think about what's most important, what's essential, and let's put that in. And then every book I write is usually twice as long before it actually gets published. Right. So I cut out a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, cut out a bunch of stuff. Anything I think is not really actually valuable to people, we're going to cut it. So
yeah. Okay. So he's got to go. We got 1 minute left. We got a 60-second little speed bonus question.
All right.
Speed bonus question. Biggest pitfall that you've seen people do. Biggest mistake.
Biggest mistake. Okay. Let's see. We talked about maybe waiting too long. Biggest mistake. I mean, you highlighted like people had these ideas, they had these seeds, but they didn't plant them, and that's probably going to be the biggest thing. But maybe also just like not following up. Not maybe actually having the idea and being like, well, that's not really going to do anything. Like nobody's going to want to pay me to like have a blog about the cruises. Nobody else wants a candle. $80 candle out there. Nobody else wants whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
So maybe just like inability to take that next step. And I've been there at different points in my life too. Like I can think of times that I like had an idea and it probably would have been good, but I walked away from it. So I'm trying to do less walking away, and I'm hoping to encourage other people in the same way.
I will tell you this: procrastination is the killer of hopes and dreams. So most hopes and dreams don't die because of the economy. They don't die because of Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. They die because you just put too many things ahead of them. So Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Sure.
He's on a big tour. I highly recommend you go out and get Side Hustle or $100 Startup. And he's got a couple other books, but those are the 2 that I've read. So I only recommend books I've read, but I'm sure the other ones are good too. But
well, thank you, sir. That's kind.
I hope to catch up with you in person one of these days.
I would love that. Well, I'm going to a bunch of places, so maybe you'll be there.
Sounds great. All right. I'll keep going here on the podcast, and
okay.
Chris is going to drop off. Thanks so much.
Hey, cheers, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take it easy, bro.
Yeah. So let's keep talking on this subject about $100 Startup, because my story, if you know anything about my story, I basically started with under $100. Figured out how to take $100, make $100,000 a year was my first real step, and then I figured out how to make $100,000 a month, and then I figured out how to make $100,000 a week. I remember that stage. That was when I was about 2008 or 9. I was figured out how to make $100,000 a week, which was good for me then. And then I finally, I remember when I figured out how to make $100,000 a day. And now I'm working on the next stage, which is much harder, which is $100,000 an hour, which is $835 million a year. I haven't got to that stage yet, but I'm working on it. You just keep going. Someone says, Tai, you don't make $100,000 a day. Well, some people don't believe it. Some people do. The people that don't, they're always broke people, by the way. Broke people, unfortunately, because of the societal effects. They don't realize that me making $100,000 a day is still chump change. It's chump change. There's people make it, and I make more than $100,000 a day now with my business or my businesses. But yeah, I think that if we only knew, like, I didn't grow up with money. I didn't grow up with a mom or a dad making $100,000 a year. And so I couldn't imagine if somebody would have told me $100,000 a day, I would have not believed it either. So for all of you that are cynical, I know where you're coming from. You come from a place of ignorance that I was once in, and that it's easy, and most of the world is in. And life's tough when you're in a state of ignorance. I mean, most of the world, you know that there's mothers that give their kids Coca-Cola, their babies. I mean, there's thousands or tens of thousands of people, mothers and parents, that don't know that junk food is bad and contributing to childhood obesity. They don't know. It's ignorance. It's not like they're trying. No one tries to kill their own kids, or 99.99% of people don't do that. It's the same with money. People don't know. So do you blame an ignorant person? Like, do I get mad at the person who was here on Twitter saying, I don't believe you make $100,000? I don't get mad, because at the end of the day, remember this. The goal of life is to enjoy your life. And so imagine that you're this, ball, right? And around you is this, like a hamster in a little plastic ball that runs around your house. You ever seen those? You put a hamster in it and let it run around the house. My friend used to have a hamster, Joe. He used to let it run around the house, and it was funny to watch. And that's how you have to become, because you have external forces, okay? And the way those external forces, they're always trying to penetrate your bubble. And they penetrate it in many ways, with their doubts, with their own projections of their own fears, with their own projections of their own ignorance. And they will come at you, and they'll often be your own family. For those of you who start a $100 startup, for those of you who try to make money, mark my words, those closest to you, not all of them, but some of those closest to you, will become the people messing with your world more than anyone else in a negative way. And remember why. It is simply because they are externalizing their own paranoia. I mean, look at the news. The news right now is full of people that are externalizing their own paranoia. You see it on Twitter a lot. People get butthurt over anything. Like today, actually, this girl, I don't know how she got my number. She WhatsApped me from the UK, and she sent me some pictures. Just regular pictures, not like nude pictures or anything, right? I'll read you her thing. I'm not going to call her out and show you her thing. So I didn't reply, because yesterday I had 33 of the biggest crypto people came over to my house, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain people. And so I was literally from 5 p.m. till 5 in the morning, I was with them. We were talking, we were doing plans, right? And so she wrote this morning when I woke up, "Oh, I'm not your type," which is bizarre because I hadn't said that. So I just wrote LOL. I laughed because I thought it was funny. Like, I didn't say you're not my type. I didn't say anything. I just literally was busy. And so she goes, I said LOL. And she wrote right back, "Oh, I thought your whole brand was based on building people up." Like, she thought I was tearing her down because I said LOL. I was laughing because I thought it was funny that somebody, like, if I write somebody and they're busy and they don't write me back, I don't write back, "Oh, I'm not your type." So she was projecting insecurities that have nothing to do with me. Fears that have, I don't know this girl. She must have had a tough life that she projected anybody not responding in the way that she wanted to be responded to is an affront to her self-esteem. And trust me, that's how the world is. The second each of you begins to, let's say you do a $100 startup, and you take $100 and you figure out how to make $1,000 a month, or $5,000 or $10,000 a month. Somebody who's insecure about their financial situation is going to start saying, "Oh, you've changed. Oh, you've changed." Well, yeah, you've changed. You're making more money. Change is the name of the game. I mean, who doesn't want to change in some way? Is there any person here who, if they could snap their fingers and had a genie give them a wish, wouldn't want any change? Would your one wish be like, my wish is that nothing changes? Like, the definition of a wish is you want something new in your life. So when people say to you, whether they be your own family or a friend, you've changed, say, thank you. That was the whole damn goal. So I'm accomplishing my goal and you're confirming it. And that's very important around money because nothing. I was on H3 podcast a couple of days ago. Ethan and Hilla Klein. And one of the things that I see, and we were talking about this, is that nothing makes people more freaked out than money. Like if I talk about money, people have, it's literally like I'm trying to destroy society to some people. Some people go, oh, who is this guy trying to give people financial hope? Oh, how dare he? What? I'm going, well, what world do you want to live in? No hope? Whatever you are, the poor will just continue to get poorer and the rich will just continue to get richer. Did you know the top 10 wealthiest people in the world have more money than the bottom 50%? So you're satisfied with the bottom 50%, 3.5 billion people, having less money than the top 10? So if I try to shake that up a little bit by talking to the bottom 3.5 billion people, poor people, that I'm somehow taking advantage of people. I mean, it's so stupid. The logic is one of the I was talking to somebody yesterday. I'm like, who wants to have a live debate with me? Because I will shred you. If you think that in some way I'm giving false hope to the poor or the middle class, you are an idiot and you deserve to be treated like an idiot. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, this is bad. You know what's going to mess up the world? Somebody trying to help bring income equality. And people go, well, Ty, but you charge for your programs. Well, first of all, I just passed 1 billion minutes of free videos watched on YouTube. 1 billion. Did anybody pay for that? No. And I don't run any ads on my videos, meaning I didn't make 1 penny from those $1 billion directly. People might buy my stuff indirectly when they watch a video, but literally 1 billion minutes watched, not a million, 1 billion minutes watched for free, and I made not a penny. So you're right. I have some stuff that I charge money. Why not? People pay fucking $5 for bullshit hamburger at McDonald's that gives you diabetes. So you can pay me something too. They ain't going to give you diabetes. It might help you create a diabetes pharmaceutical startup or medical startup that helps people cure diabetes. Yeah, so get over it. Stop being butthurt hater. Stop projecting. Stop shooting out your insecurities about your own financial situation onto other people that are trying to do their thing. And am I perfect? Of course not. You know, I purposely post stuff on my Snapchat and Instagram that some people consider not angelic because I don't want people to think I'm an angel. I never projected myself as a religious leader. I'm not Joel Osteen. I'm not saying I'm some moral compass for the world. I am what I am, and I am just a regular human sharing their life experience. And my life experience is that each of you watching, if you can come up with $100, you can change your life financially. Okay? You can change your life financially. And if you get butthurt about that and you're a conspiracy theorist that the rich will always hold down the poor, then good. Go to your grave with your cynicism. It's fine. At the end of the day, we all go into our grave. The cynics, the optimists, the realists, you all go into the grave. You all go into the grave with me. There ain't nobody getting out. Even if there's anti-aging medicine, everybody's going to the grave at basically the same damn pace. Some people do it in an enjoyable way, and some people do it in a depressed, anxious, butthurt, triggered way continually. And you choose your own prison, you know? Some people are their own prison, the prison of the mind. At the end of the day, all go with the way of being a realist. And realist understands that you can't be an optimist and you can't be a pessimist. it's not realistic to say that everybody is going to find financial security, that everybody's going to break out of poverty. It ain't going to happen. Poverty is deep. It's deep at many levels. It goes beyond just a few videos of mine going to solve the whole problem. But if it solves it for one person, then it ain't that bad. If it solves it for two people, I've had hundreds of thousands of people go through my paid training programs. You don't think I have testimonials? Shit. If I bring together all the people that have been helped by my programs, I'm going to do this. I just haven't had time. I do it once in a while. If I put them all in a damn room and just sent that video to anybody who hates on me, you would shut the fuck up. I promise you. Because you would see people who are from the inner city. You'd see people who are homeless, who now are living a badass life. I post so many, put it this way, I have so many testimonials pouring in. I have 1 to 2 full-time people sorting through testimonials. The day you have to hire a full-time employee, I probably got 70 full-time employees or contractors for my main brand, TaiLopez.com, not counting my other companies, but my personal brand, Tai Lopez. I got to hire one person and pay them $70,000 a year just to manage the testimonials coming through, to manage the videos. And so some people go, oh, how do you know they're all real? Well, probably a fake one slips in here and there, but we look into them. And if you go to your community college, try to assemble all the amazing testimonials of people who go, you know what I learned in my community college history of Mesopotamia class? Boy, this changed my life. Show me those testimonials. I'm not saying nobody's ever been helped by community college, but I could tell you this, a lot of damn people spend money on community college and get nothing for it. And some people spend money on my stuff and they get nothing for it too. It's the name of the game. It's how life goes. Like sometimes stuff works for people and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes Cipro, which is one of the most prescribed drugs by doctors on 80, 90% of people, it helps. And the other 10% get crazy allergies and die and get paralyzed. There's huge side effects to everything, but it doesn't mean you never prescribe antibiotics. Like some antibiotics work. And on certain people, they have massive reactions and they actually kill them. It's welcome to planet Earth, the world of some uncertainty. One of the problems in the world, and one of the problems for those of you listening who are trying to start a business, trying to change your life, trying to make more money, trying to invest in the stock market, maybe you want to get in Bitcoin and crypto, is your goal is to remove all uncertainty from your life. As if this is remotely possible. Like, explain how you would remove all uncertainty for your life. People go, well, is this guaranteed that I'll go from broke to making money? Well, it ain't even guaranteed that you're going to make it to the end of this day. Good chance, because a lot of people watch my live streams and listen to podcasts, okay, and watch my videos. Let's say 100,000 people are going to watch this or listen to this in the next week. One person going to get run over by a car today. So I can't remove uncertainty. And the second you try to remove all uncertainty, you're a moron. You forgot the name of the game. You don't understand physics. You don't understand biology. You don't understand the natural rhythms of life, which is spring, summer, fall, and winter. There's a winter cycle to your own life, to your own entrepreneurial ventures. There will be a spring, and when you're planting new seeds and trying new things, there'll be the summer where you have to work hard on accomplishing what you want. The summer on a farm is where you work the hardest. And there will be a fall where you reap, where you get all the good stuff, where you cash in and you make the money. But there will also be a winter. And the winter is a dark time. And it's a time for introspection. It's a time for planning and regrouping. And sometimes it's a time of retreat. And there's also a cycle to society like that. We're probably currently in the summer or the autumn, if you live in the United States, and even globally in the world's economy. And there will be a winter. The last winter was 2008. It's a little bit like Game of Thrones. The winter is always coming, And 2008 to probably 2012 was a winter in the world. 6 million people lost their homes in the United States. People around the world, of course, the poor usually are hit in a worse way than the wealthy because they don't have as much cash on hand. So when the winter comes, it's like not having a t-shirt or not having a sweater. You get a lot colder. And so people lost money and then they regroup. And 2012, 13, 14 was, spring and maybe some summer. And right now, things are at an all-time high for people. People are making a lot of money. Bitcoin is up. Had you put $100 in Bitcoin in 2010, today you'd have over $75 million. So this is a time of winter, of summer, spring, and possibly of the harvest time. But mark my words, the winter will come. Some of you who are unprepared. See, if you're prepared for the winter, it isn't so bad. That's like the whole point of Game of Thrones. The whole point of Game of Thrones is one dude is trying to really prepare the world, right? Jon Snow is like trying to prepare the world for the winter. He's kind of a realist that's like, yo, get your act together or else you're going to be surprised by the White Walkers. And the White Walkers in the modern world are poverty, their economic recession, or what economists call contraction. Okay, contraction in the world is a time of where your bank account contracts. You thought you had $10,000 and now you have, $1,000. That's a contraction of the bank account. And the way you fight that is the same way you fight anything. You fight it actively. You fight it through education, through knowing what the hell it is you're fighting. So most people, if you're listening, we're talking about the $100 startup. We're talking about the philosophy of the $100 startup. What people don't understand is that the reason you don't have as much money as you should coming in per month, it's always rooted in not knowing what you're doing. The problem with the education system is pumping out at a continual rate people based on Bismarck in the 1800s, his idea of educational system, which was to create soldiers, right, for Prussia. That's the modern education system is a Prussian, which is before there was Germany. Bismarck is the guy who really created Germany, the modern conception of a unified Germany. It used to be a whole bunch of provinces. You used to have, Prussia was a big one, and you had Bavaria, and you had all these different places. This one dude brought it all together, and he was a big soldier. His name was Bismarck, late 18, I think it was the 1870s or 80s. And he brought together and he created an education system that would spit out soldiers. And you want soldiers to be a little bit like robots. Somebody said Prussia and Russia. No, Prussia and Russia are unrelated. Russia is much more to the east. Prussia was where like Berlin is now in Germany. And so you and I spit out a robotic human being in terms of what we understand about money. So we're spit out with this basic core premise, which is you work hard, you get a job, you get a college degree, financial security, removal of uncertainty. Well, that worked in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. It began to crumble a bit in the 1970s. In the 1970s, you had weird things happen in the economy. You had stagflation, okay? You had in the 1980s, you started to have things like the savings and loan crisis. You had 1987, another crash in the stock market. Then the 1990s came along and a new era came, which was the internet, 1994. And then, Amazon started in 1994. And remember, that was like the spring. Everything was being planted. 1994, Amazon starting. The internet as we know it is like really starting. And then like 1999, 2000, all of a sudden the winter came. I was speaking last weekend with Naveen Jain. Naveen Jain made $8.2 billion before the year 2000, and then it crashed, and his company was only worth $200 million, from $8 billion to $200 million. So it crashed. That was a contraction period. But he stuck through it, and now he's a billionaire again. And he said he would be because he understood the cycles. And so a lot of you, your problem is you don't understand the philosophy of the $100 startup, the philosophy of going from nothing to something. And for those of you listening, it'll be, as I said, some of you, about 30% of you, are fear-based. So you're trying to remove all uncertainty before you try to change how much money is in your bank account. So like, Tai, what's the guaranteed way I can make more money? Well, there is no guaranteed way. But there's some ways that are a hell of a lot better than others. Trust me. I mean, there's no guaranteed way. Like working as a barista at Starbucks, okay? It's pretty much guaranteed you're never going to prosper financially. Like you might be able to pay the bills, but you ain't going to prosper, okay? But there is a chance, theoretically, that you could like somehow get promoted to become the CEO of Starbucks having started as a barista. It's not great odds. Like if you were a poker player and you played those odds, you'd be an idiot. You know, it'd be like having like, you know, you're playing Texas Hold'em and you have like 2 and a 3 and like no face guard. Like you'd be an idiot to bet a lot of money on that. And some things have a high chance of winning. One of the things we talked about earlier is like with Chris Guillebeau was like you have a high chance of making money from something you already know how to do, but you didn't realize it could be turned into a business. That's the key thing. Like you didn't realize it could be turned either into a full-time business or a side hustle. And one of the things that can become a side hustle, for example, let's say you worked at Starbucks because you're, I don't know, a single mom or a single dad or something like that. And it's tough. Like being a single parent is tough. So one of the things you could do is take your own problem. So your problem, let's say, is being a single parent and not making much money. You could create a WordPress blog where you talk about 100 ideas for single parents in the world to make money on the side. And you start collecting ideas and you start posting videos. And the next thing you know, you create a little course online or you do personal life coaching and you're making $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month off solving a problem that's relevant to your life. That's why I said everybody has a business they could start, because unless you're perfect, everybody has a problem. Some of you watching are overweight and you can't shed the weight. Well, that's a problem that you share with 100+ million people in the United States, and hundreds of millions of people globally are out of shape. So you create an Instagram where you start to post your journey of overweight to ideal weight. People start to tune in, and maybe you don't have 500,000 followers, but maybe you have 10,000 followers. That's enough. And maybe you start doing some public speaking and you get paid to do public speaking. You know, you're getting paid $1,000 to speak here, $1,000 to speak here. You're doing some private FaceTime coaching with people that are struggling. And even if you're not an actual personal trainer, people need more than personal trainers. Personal trainers are important, but you know what else people need? People need encouragement. So you become an accountability encouragement coach to help people who struggle with being overweight eat right and work out. And they pay you $50 a month for you to check in on them once a week, how they're doing. And you get 100 people out there. It's not hard to find 100 people who are overweight paying you $50 a month, and you're making $5,000 a month. That's a problem that you have. The problems in this world are immense. I have a friend who's really into politics. I'm not so into politics. He doesn't like, he actually likes Donald Trump. So he created a pro kind of Republican Facebook page, and he posts a lot of political stuff. And then he occasionally does a sponsored post for a business. And he's making, I think, like $7,000 a month posting on Facebook, getting sponsorships. He built a following of people who are Republicans, and you could do the same thing if you're a Democrat. You love Bernie Sanders, you love Hillary, you could create that and you can monetize the list. So a problem in your life maybe is you don't like the politics in the world, or you like them, and that becomes your problem you solve with your $100 startup or your side hustle, and you're starting to make money off of it. I've also said, hello, Maya.
Hello, I was just saying Brad's here, and he can talk about how to grow your business
Oh.
from nothing to something. So
Yeah, well, we'll restart the live calls. You want to come in here?
yeah, come on in.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this episode. We're moving to the next episode. Somebody said Maya is prettier than Tai. Well, that's good.
Weird compliment.
I don't want to be called pretty. We're going to reset the cameras. We'll be back in a few minutes. Next episode, hour number 2. Or we didn't quite do an hour, but we'll call this hour number 2
Real fast.
of my podcast. For those of you, you can listen in 2 ways, by the way. For those of you listening to me on the live stream, if you didn't catch the whole thing, or if you can't watch it on your phone because you need to make some phone calls, download iTunes and subscribe to my podcast, The Tai Lopez Show. Also, for those of you who like Spotify, I'm now on Spotify. I got approved on Spotify. So they don't have, in most places, they haven't fully rolled podcasts out everywhere. But so download this. So we'll be back in just a minute. There we go. Madero said, the real Brad Lee. Awesome. You got your fans showing up. So I will, let me snap. I forgot to. It's okay. All right. Talk to you guys. We'll be back in 5 minutes.